Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Exploring Photography right here on Adorama TV. Today I am joined by Azul Sofía. She is our model here in Mexico City. Now we are going to be covering something today that a lot of people have asked me, and that is, where do you point your light meter? Do you point it at the camera or do you point it at the light? It's a very important thing to understand because you can get radically different results. And you need to know which way to point that so you can be very intentional about your exposures. So we're going to talk about this. The first thing you need to understand is this thing right here. This is called a Lumisphere. It's this little white dome, and they come in all different sizes, but they have the same shape, which is a half sphere. What that's doing is it's gathering all of the light in 180 degrees. So all the light over here, all the light here, all the light here, all the light up there, all the light down here. It's gathering all of that light and it's averaging it to a middle gray for a proper exposure. So when you have light like this, so I've set up this softbox here, very, very strong side light on Sofía. So this side of her face is illuminated. This side of her face is totally falling into shadow. So if I want to make sure that I expose for the shadows and the highlights, I want to take into account all of these different types of light here, the dark and the light, I need to point my Lumisphere at the camera, because what that Lumisphere is doing is it's taking this light and it's averaging it with this shadow, and that's going to preserve our shadows. So some people call that metering for the shadows because you're going to preserve the detail in that shadow area. But if I don't care about the shadows, I want to get a really high contrasty chiaroscuro kind of look, well then I would meter toward the light. Now that Lumisphere is only seeing the light coming from our key light here, and it's ignoring all these shadows here. So what that's going to do is give us a different exposure, and all these shadows are going to fall into darkness. Now to illustrate this, let me do a couple of meter readings here. So I have my camera set up to ISO 200. I have it set to my sync speed, which is about 125th of a second. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a meter reading toward the camera right here. We do that, and that's metering right at 7.1. Now if I take this and I meter it to the key light, just like that, now I get a reading of f9. So there are two very different exposures. So let me show you these exposures. We already taken some pictures earlier. Now this first image at 7.1, you can see that we've preserved the shadow detail, and our highlights are a little bit hotter than in this second picture where I metered just for the highlights. Now our shadows have fallen totally into darkness and our highlights are exposed a little bit darker. And so we have two different pictures with two different metering styles. One, we're preserving the highlights. The other, we're preserving the shadows. And that's how that works. Now, in practical terms, usually you might have more than one light. So if you have several lights and you want to meter for different light ratios, well, you would meter to one light and just expose that to the Lumisphere, and then meter to the second light and see what the difference is. Or if you have a hair light or a kicker light, something that's coming this way toward the camera, well, obviously you would have to point your meter to that light to see how much light is falling on your subject. So you're metering for the highlights on your subject, metering for the highlights on your subject's hair, metering for the highlights on your subject's face. But when you want to average everything and get a total exposure, you point that to the camera and get that entire meter reading. All right, well, now that we know all that theory, we're going to shoot some pictures and show you our results. Well, that's all there is to it. If you want to make sure you preserve your shadow detail, meter to the camera. If you don't care about your shadows, meter to the light. And you can see by the shots that we got, we were able to create some really high contrast images that preserve some shadows and also some where the shadows fall completely into darkness. And it was as simple as just pointing the meter at the right place. Well, thank you so much for joining me in this episode of Exploring Photography. Don't forget to subscribe to Adorama TV. That way you don't miss a single episode. And also check out the Adorama Learning Center. There are hundreds of videos all about photography and specifically about light ratios and metering and Lumispheres and all that kind of stuff. So check it out. It's absolutely free. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Sofía, for being a fantastic model today. I will see you again next time.